Okay, here we go. So today, I got a little bit of time, so we're gonna do some streaming of Bolt 2, the Alpha 6. This sixth release. There's now a seventh one planned. But today, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna load in Bolt Alpha 6 for the first time. You can see my screen here. All I've done is downloaded the alpha. I've imported it into Unity just to make sure that's all there and not take up the time on the live stream. So, just a quick disclaimer here to help out the folks over at Bolt, right? This is an alpha, right? This is super early testing. This is going to be buggy. There's going to be problems with it. Its performance may not be great because it's an alpha, right? We're not even in the beta stage yet. So if you're looking at this, you're saying, hey, this looks really great. I'd love to use this in my projects. I'd really encourage you to not do that. But if you want to get on there, play around with it, test it, and give some feedback, I know the Bolt folks would really appreciate that and help move this from the alpha stage to the beta stage, and then eventually to a stable release. It'll be up on the asset store. So a few things might be useful for you guys before we get started here. I'll put links to all these pages in the video description below. Hopefully they're there right now. This is the page with the download. You can download the Alpha 6. And again, you can see these big red and yellow warnings about compatibility. It's going to break compatibility left and right. So don't even think about trying to import a Bolt 1 project or even an Alpha 5 project. I don't think that's working at the moment. It will work when it's stable. Also, if you guys want to see all the changes that came with Alpha 6. I'm going to try to look at a lot of these. I'm going to put this over on my other monitor as a cheat sheet. This is the change log. There's a ton of stuff that Laszlo's put up here on the changes. It's got all kinds of stuff about classes, the variables, the functions, you name it, it's there. There's some really good stuff there. Again, link in the description below. And again, to help out Laszlo and the folks over at Bolt, I put a link into the community page here. If you are going to play around with this is a great place to report those bugs. Don't do it on the Discord server. They just get lost in the stream of comments. Do it over here, and let's help these guys out. And lastly, if you don't know how to get a hold of Bolt 2, a little bit of shameless plugging. There's a video I made a while back here, how to go find your serial number, so to speak, in the asset store and plug it into the Ludic page so you can download it. Anyways, let's get started. So here's what I'm at. I've imported it. I haven't done anything. I have yet to do this. So I'm taking a little bit of a risk here in not having done this before. We're hoping this is all going to work. Setup wizard is different. It's definitely different than it was with a Bolt 1. See, we got kind of our types like we did before. That looks great. We got namespaces that we can add in. No assemblies at the moment. Options. I'm going to do the full extract here. I did this with Alpha 4, Alpha 5. It was pretty quick. So let's push that and see what happens. And we'll let this extract and get going. And so for those of you guys, it looks like we've got a bunch of folks joining. If you guys have questions, feel free to throw it into the chat. I'll do my best to answer, respond to those. But the goal for today is really just to see, hey, what's going on? What do we have here with Bolt 2? If you haven't been following along with the alphas, Alpha 6 is by far the biggest changes that have come to Bolt 2. We've got classes and we've got functions. The workflow is very different. And of course, we've had for quite a while, quite a few alphas, we have this C-sharp generation as we go. So there we go. That was pretty quick. If you guys are used to Bolt 1, that was definitely quicker than Bolt 1. So let's see what we got here. Up at Windows, because we're going to have a bunch of different windows. It looks different than it did. So if I come here up to Window and Bolt, you can see my options here. I do have a graph inspector and variables, the legacy ones. Probably not going to look at those too much. Toolbar, we get these buttons here, and I believe there's no tooltip at the moment, but I believe I played with these earlier. These have to do with adding assemblies and types to Bolt. We got those. Open up our graph window. All right, looks pretty normal. dock that down there like I like to. What else do we got here? We got the Explorer. This is something I'm excited about. So one of my complaints, one of my issues with Bolt 1, but really just in visual scripting as a whole, it was really hard to like trace where a variable was used in your project. You could have, say for Bolt 1, if you renamed a variable, it wouldn't rename it in your whole project. So that's changed. If you rename a variable, it's going to go through your entire project and change it and update it. It's now referenced with a GUID behind the scenes. So I'm pretty excited about this Explorer. It's going to help with some of that, figuring out how things are connected. Some of the more powerful bits of what you might find like in Visual Studio or so. I can't there we go. Now I can resize it. All right, what else we got here? Bolt. So I got my Explorer. We got the C# preview. As a teacher, I'm pretty excited to see this C# preview. I'm going to put it over here in my inspector. I'm not sure if that's really where I'm going to want it to be. But I'm pretty excited about this, and for making tutorial videos, I'm pretty excited about it. One of the things I want to try to figure out video-wise is, can I make Bolt videos where we got the flow graph going on one part and the C# on the other side? Because that would be really neat to be able to see that. Okay, so let's figure out what's going on here. Let's go down here to see if we can figure this out. So I'm going to go down here to my Explorer and press create. And there we go. So this is going to come up. Now, one of the things, I read over the changelog, so I'm vaguely familiar with how this works, but we're going to do a little bit of fumbling around here. I'm going to open up a new folder. I'm going to open up classes. Let's call it Bolt classes. Get a little bit more specific. So one of the major changes here is that Bolt is now using classes much like other programming languages and C# does. So Bolt 2 is much more closely aligned to C# than it was originally. So I'm excited to see what this is. So I'm gonna call it spinning cube, because one of the goals that I have today is I just want to see how this works. I want to get a cube on the screen that is spinning around. There's a few other things that I'd love to do, and that would be, I'm really excited about events. I've heard from the Discord channel, it sounds like they're maybe a little buggy at the moment, but I'd love to see how that works. I'd love to figure out how functions work. It also sounds like maybe there's some issues with calling functions, calling them on a class that they don't exist. That makes sense. So on class A, I'm calling a function that's on class B. But I'm excited to see what's going on. So here we got our spinning cube, and I think this part is going to be fairly normal here. You can see down here in our editor now, I've got the name of the class. You got a summary here where you can type it up, and a category. Now my understanding is that the summary and the category, this is just for your own organization. And then down here at the scope, this is one of the big changes. So classes are going to come in 4 different scopes. So if you're coming from another programming language, this idea of scope is probably a term, or hopefully a term that you're familiar with. But this is basically controls who and what this class does and who can access it. So we've got 4 types that are implemented right now. The 5th, which is an object type, there's not very much documentation about that. My understanding is that is not implemented at the moment. So we've got the component class, and if you're coming from a C# background, this is basically a mono behavior. This is the type of script that you're going to attach to an object in your scene. So I'm going to guess most of the time, most of us are going to be creating a component class. We're going to be attaching these to a class component, similarly to the flow machine in Bolt 1. Then I'm very excited about this next one, an asset, which is effectively a scriptable object, or it's very similar to a scriptable object. And as it's named, it's an asset. So this class, this chunk of variables and functions is going to sit in your project. It's not going to exist in a scene. And there's lots of really good things to be done with that. Just another shameless plug. I'm in the middle of working on some new videos for DevDog, and we're doing some work with scriptable objects. And it's awesome what you can do with it. And so I'm pretty excited to see where these assets can go. The next two here are fairly similar. These are the scene variable or scene class. This is basically a class that's going to exist only in your scene. You're not going to attach it to an object. And there's only going to be one of them in your scene. And my understanding is that Bolt 2 will automatically stick this into your scene for you, which can be pretty nice if you want some game managers or such things where you definitely only need one copy of it, and Bolt's going to stick it in your scene for you. So you can kind of, I'm hoping, maybe thinking, that keeps your hierarchy a little bit cleaner. And then this last one here, the singleton, or I might have these backwards. I might have the scene and singleton backwards. The singleton effectively works like a static class. This is if you're not familiar with the idea of a static class, it doesn't exist in the scene. It just exists in the project. You can't instantiate it. You can't attach it to a game object, but you can access it from basically any other chunk of code. So you could have variables on there, say player turn or player health, and any other class in the project should be able to access that because it's just sitting in your asset folder. The other piece that distinguishes this from the asset class is there can only be one of these. So if I create player stats and it's a singleton, I can only have one player stats in my entire project that's named that. So there's definitely some useful bits and pieces here. And like I said, the object class definition is not implemented yet. Laszlo's put a little bit up on the changelog. I didn't dig into that one very much because it's not up there. But it is going to be something I believe that doesn't really have a parallel to anything in C#. So I'm going to start off with a component because what I want to do, I just want to get a cube spinning. That's all I want to do. I want to get that spinning. I want to see how this works. And if people want to see something more complicated, more intricate, we can work on that. But that's kind of what I want to start with and see if I can get this working. So I'm going to leave that a component. And then down here, let's see if I can, if I can resize it a little bit. Little buggy there. And so some of these bugs, like being a little sticky there, not sliding around very well, probably just a matter of it being an alpha. So down here, here's where we're going to define the graph. So this is a class. You can kind of think of it as this big wrapper, this big container. And we're going to be able to define graphs and variables as well as events. So let's start off with a new graph here. And here we have more options. So I know, I was thinking about this as a teacher with my students. We've got these 5 different scopes of class definitions, and then we got 4 different graphs. It could be a little intimidating. But what we have here are, again, we have 3 different flow graphs, if you will. The state behavior, this works exactly like a state behavior did in, state graph, state machine in Bolt 1. Not going to hit that today. The function and the macro, I'd have to look at my cheat sheet. These are similar, but that they don't necessarily... Well, let's go through it one by one, rather. So the behavior here, the flow behavior, this responds to Unity events like update and start, on disabled, on enabled, which is great. The flow function, this has inputs and outputs similar to... I'm going to get some of this backwards, I know. This is a little bit similar to like the... super unit in that you have a flow in, flow out. And then the macro, my understanding with the macro is that this will respond to events, I think custom events, and you can have as many inputs as you need and as many flow outputs as you need. So again, there'll be some growing pains here as we figure out what's best and what we want to use. But let's start off real simple here with a flow behavior. Okay, so as soon as I do that, very cool. All right, my C# preview over here on the right shows up. Pretty tiny little print over there, at least on my 4K screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. And what we've got there is our start and our update functions typed in for us. Pretty awesome. So let's do I don't know. Let's figure out what's going on here. So I right clicked to bring up the add unit, and happened. Oh, there. Hmm. Sort of coming up. There we go. All right. So again, a little buggy. Maybe I'm not fully up to speed on what I need to do. So I'm going to type in start. We're going to start add a start, and it added another start. Oh. Resting. Why don't I have, oh, interesting, untitled flow behavior? Let's get rid of this. Let's see if maybe that's an issue. Let's try creating another flow behavior. I'm not entirely sure where I'd be naming this flow behavior. So I can tell where I'm going to put it. Okay, I can add a group. A flow function. Can I do a flow function? My flow function. All right, testing flow function. Let's see here. Try creating it in the Explorer. Okay, I will try that. Lazy Goblins, much appreciated. Let's try that. Here. All right. Let's call it spinning cube. I don't know if it's gonna be happy with. Let's get rid of the spaces there. Okay. Let's see if we open that graph. Add there. That's looking better. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Let's resting. Just very different. As you can tell, right? I have not used this before. This is different. So let's actually, if we're gonna make this spin, we're gonna make this spin. Let's do a transform rotation, rotate. All right, let's do that. If this will come up. What you guys are saying here. Hey Gary Gallagher, how do you install on the Ludic website? If you check in the video description below, I've got a link to a video that shows you how you can install this from the Ludic website. Let's see, Cryptic 808. I think I read about that bug that you got to go play mode, out of play mode. Let's see if that. There you go. Okay, I did read about that. Thank you for reminding me of that. Now I've got things all over the place. So if you guys didn't catch that, Cryptic 808 reminded me of the bug that's going on right now. There's something to do with going in and out of play mode that's refreshing something and bringing things up. So let's get rid of that. We don't really need that. Let's add an update event. Well, see if this will work. Come on. All right. I'm supposed to restart this, so we're gonna close Unity, open it up. But one of the things I'm interested in once we get past some of these entry level videos, we'll be looking at some of those design patterns. How do we do those? How do we do that with Bolt 2 and so allow us to design better games? Okay, so now I've restarted and we're gonna follow the setup wizard. I really prefer programmer naming. I think Laszlo really suggests human naming, but not that different. Again, we've seen all this before earlier in the stream. I'm just going to push full extract, go with the default settings. This is way quicker. I don't know if you guys, this can be pretty painful in Bolt 1, all this extraction. So it's pretty impressive that the full extraction, it takes like 20, 30 seconds. At least here on my current computer. Let's see what you guys are saying. The comments filling up here a little bit. Yeah, Cryptic 808. The more useful coroutines delegates. The tweening, that I'm excited about too. The delegates, I remember playing around with the delegates on an earlier alpha, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on with them. I'm gonna have to study up a little bit more. So once again here, I'm gonna open up my graph window here, like I did earlier in the stream. Let's, fingers crossed, we're gonna, this is going to work a little bit smoother now that I actually follow the directions. My wife will tell you I don't follow directions very well. All right, back here. All right, so we're gonna create a new folder here. Bolt classes. I already did this, but since it's a new project, we're gonna do it again. So we created that, and that is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a folder. Bolt classes. Okay. And the other thing I read on the Discord server, there's a little bit of a performance. There's performance lag spikes, if you will. And Laszlo's aware of that. That's going to get fixed in Alpha 7. So this is not the final Alpha. It's going to get fixed in Alpha 7. So let's do, go into that folder here, and we're going to do spinning cube. All right, so we've got that. Let's do our go into play mode and out of play mode trick and see, again, that seems to refresh something along the lines and let things know where they are. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to create a graph. I'm going to go through a flow behavior. And there we go. Okay, that's looking better. Let's see if our fuzzy finder, it's working. So let's do transform rotate. And we're just going to do, the simplest one here. And let's pull this up a little bit. So the other thing that you may notice right off the bat is that Bolt 2, I believe by default, I think it might be an option. Don't quote me on that. We now have a vertical flow in our flow graph. So what we're going to do here, we're going to rotate. Let's just rotate on our y-axis. We're going to spin around like this. And the angle, I don't know, this is going to be every frame. So let's go 1 frame. And then we're going to put in a cube like so. So there's our cube. And again, the goal here, my first goal here is just to get a spinning cube. And again, if you didn't notice, how sweet is it that the C# generation is just working? That's gorgeous over there. For those of you who are not familiar or comfortable with C#, this is going to be an amazing way to learn it. It's also going to be a really good excuse to upgrade your monitor to a 4K monitor so you can get a little bit more real estate going on. Okay, let's go over to our inspector. And there are no more flow machines in Bolt 2. And if they are there, they're depreciated. We're not going to be using them. We're going to be using instead what's called a class component. And as far as I understand, this is working really similarly to the flow machine in that it's gonna house, it's gonna host, it's gonna contain our class definition. So our class definitions here in our project, I'm just going to drag that in like that. Very nice. I'm then going to move my game camera. Oh, wrong button. Why aren't you working for me? Let's do it this way. Align with. Okay, just moving my game camera so we can see the spinning cube. A push play. And there's our spinning cube. Okay, so not very exciting. Certainly not very exciting. But that's kind of for the simplest workflow. There you go. We've got a class component, or sorry, we've got a class definition, which is a component in scope We've added it to the cube with the class component on the object itself. Let's see what's popped up over here. So over here in our Explorer, we can see instances, and I'm not really sure what this is. Okay, so here's what's that's kind of cool. So now I can see, I'm going to interpret a little bit of what's going on here. So I've got my spinning cube class, and it's showing me where it's being used in my scene. So if I double click on there, it's highlighting over here in my hierarchy. That's really nice. That is really nice. Let's see, we got a few comments here. Cryptic 808, yeah, there is a Boolean for the horizontal versus vertical. I wonder where that is. We'll explore that later. Let's see, are there tooltips on these? Here we go. Collapse. We got a line. Yeah, I think somebody was commenting about the snapping, right? The snapping, it'll snap into place much easier. You can see it kind of snap into place there as I move it over. Kind of keep things tidy. This is really neat. I haven't seen this here, but this button right here, if you guys can see it, I know it's kind of tiny. There's a little cloud with an arrow in it, a share button. I was reading what Laszlo was saying about this, but I think what it'll do is it'll send an image of your flow or of your class, whatever you're working on, and it's going to paste the C# code somewhere into GitHub that you can share it easily, which is pretty fantastic. And somebody commented this on the Discord channel. How awesome is it? You're going to be able to work through your Bolt workflow here with your class definitions. And if you want to get help on it, you can copy the C# code over here on the right. Should be a copy to clipboard option right here, and you can paste in the code onto a help site, and people can read the C# code, and they can give you a hint, a help, whether they know Bolt or not, which is pretty darn awesome. Okay, so let's do something kind of silly here. Let's stick with our spinning cube here and make it a little bit more complicated. What I'd like to do is figure out how functions work here. So maybe I will just have this angle. We're going to create a function that's going to output an angle. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to right click here on my class definition. So it's, again, taking a little bit of time to think about what's going on. Is my spinning cube, that's my class definition. Again, if I span this here, my class definition contains my graphs, my variables, and my events. Maybe before we go into functions, let's look at the variables here. One of the things that's really nice, I'm excited about, I didn't even realize, I mean, I knew it was an issue and I saw it with my students. In Bolt 1, the variables weren't really attached to the flow graph. There was this loose connection, and so if you copied, say, a flow graph and put it into a new scene, you didn't necessarily know that the variables were going to follow, and so it could create some issues. They were all solvable issues, but they were definitely could be some issues sometimes. So let's create a variable here. I don't know. Let's just create a float variable. We'll call this speed, and let's give it a value of 2. What happens if I go? Oh, okay. Again, really cool stuff here. So I just hit that down arrow, and what I've got here is a summary, so you can leave yourself some notes. If you're working in a team, you can leave some notes as to what this variable does. You got the type. That's pretty straightforward. You got a default value, and I don't think I want to explore it too much right now, but you can control whether you have a public getter and setter. That's really nice. And maybe it's just as simple as toggling those on and off. And so what that can do is, so I could, like, say, untoggle that set button, and now any class out there could potentially access this variable. They can get the value for it, but they can't change it. And that's pretty darn useful. The inspect, maybe that just means it shows up in the, let's look over our inspector. There we go. Okay, so the inspect makes it show up over in the inspector. Pretty nice. The other thing this override's going to do, it's going to allow you to override the default value in the inspector. So here, if I want to change this, like I can't change this now, but if I click on it, then I can change this to whatever I want and set it for that particular instance of it. Again, Laszlo has really thought through a lot of the details. I'm really impressed. I think the learning curve to Bolt 2 is going to be a little bit steeper than Bolt 1, if I'm perfectly honest. But I think the power of it is going to be way better. So again, if I unclick that, that didn't update. Anyways, that's what those are doing. And then just like in Bolt 1, I believe we can just drag these on. So if I drag it on, I get a get value or a get unit. If I hold Alt, I get a set one. So let's get the get one. I'll connect it like that's pretty sweet. Anybody out there? What does this node do? Okay, so cool. Okay, so we've done that. We've got a variable, and again, that's showing up in our inspector. And this is one of the things I'm most excited about here is I can do like a find references. I can see where else this thing is being used. And you can see here what it searched for was the GUID reference to it. A little ugly, but that definitely works. Okay, so let's create a flow function. Let's start with a flow function. Let's see what these look like. So here we've got our input, output, and I don't know. Let's keep this one simple. We'll have no input, but we'll have an output. So what I want to do here is we'll call it like speed out. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's figure this one out. And what let's just do a simple like pulsing here. So let's do time, and we'll do time since level loaded. So we'll get that. And let's feed that into a math sign, something like that, sign function. We'll connect this like that. Anybody notice how much faster that fuzzy finder was now that I've got it working? Now that I actually followed the directions? That fuzzy finder is way faster than it used to be. That is way faster. That's thank you. The other thing, I was hoping Laszlo was going to include is that now when you search for something, the order that you type it into the fuzzy finder does not matter. And this was so frustrating for my students. After a couple years of using Bolt, like I know what to type in. But like if I search for transform position, these are my search results. If I search for the same thing in opposite order, I get the same thing. So now it's way more flexible to find what's going on or find things in the fuzzy finder. Thank you, Laszlo. Much appreciated. Okay, so now we've got this function created. So we've got some sort of input, we got the output. Let's see if we can, let's name this thing sign of time. Oh, we'll call it the sign. We'll put an E in. Sign of time. Okay, so now we've got that. How do we use that? Let's see if we can. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so if you didn't catch that, so I double clicked back on my original flow behavior, which I should name. Let's name this spinning cube. Wait, now we have spinning cube and spinning cube, which is a little confusing. But all I did to drag in that function was simply drag it off the Explorer, and I get an instance of it. And I'm willing to bet I can do the same thing with my variables. Oh, Laszlo, you did good. You did real good. Okay, let's see if we can do like that. Okay. Notice there that, right, just like in Bolt 1, we were faded out. And when I connected it, it goes full color, so to speak, meaning that we're connected. So I don't have to connect my flow through there. Let's see what happens. Oh. Value of port 1 cannot be dynamically fetched. It must be assigned. Okay. All right. Maybe I do need my flow to work. Let's try. Oh, this would be a good example to show of proxies, I think. Okay. Let's snap these things in place. Okay, the proxies didn't show up. Let's see if that works. Mm-hmm. Can we do this? Is there a hotkey to show the value? Let's do this on a maybe this just that's not going to work very well. Let's not do it there. Let's not do it there. Let's do we'll keep it rotating, and let's do a transform scale, because the scale is going to be a lot more noticeable if that thing is functioning. So let's do transform.local scale. We're going to set that. And what I'm going to do then is, let's keep our C# preview up here, because that's pretty. That might actually, I wonder how much the C# preview is going to help me figure out how to connect these things. So let's take this value here. We're going to multiply. We have a multiply generic. Is there a multiply vector 3 by float? Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the transform position get. So I'm going to get the, that's not what I want. I want the transform scale. We're going to get the local scale. We're going to multiply, so that's a vector 3. We're going to multiply it by this sign, and then we're going to feed it in like that. Now, I'm wondering if I'm still going to get that same error here because I'm not connecting it. And that might just be because I used the wrong type of whatever. Wrong type of function. Yeah, right. So we can't be fetched. Okay, so we'll make things a little... People said you couldn't make spaghetti with Bolt 2. Anybody know... oh, there's show my connection values. Okay, that's good. How do I get proxies? Oh, there you go. Hold control and get proxies. Great. Okay. Not sure how much I... All right, we're rotating. We set our scale to 0, 0, 0. Which makes sense. Okay. That makes sense because our sign starts at 0. Dumbass. Okay. Let's do, go in here. And what we're going to do, we're going to add. We're going to go, I want to go add float. Add float to float. What we're going to do is we're going to take this value and we're going to add 1 to it, and we're going to return that value. So what I'm doing is a little bit of math here, because the sign starts out at 0, so then the scale 0, you multiply it by something and it's always going to be 0. Let's see if we get a spinning pulsing cube now. Whoa. That's not what I was expecting. Well, that was different. Oh man, that's funny. Sorry, I haven't really been paying attention to the comments very much here. Let me see. Much appreciated to Lazy Goblin and Cryptic 808 here for answering questions. Much appreciated. My sign of time is still returning 0. That let's see here. Let's see if that is still and I showing values. Yeah, somehow we're still getting back to 0. I don't really understand. Anyways, let's not focus on my incompetence and inability to do math while you guys all watch. What I'm really impressed with here is how quickly, right, I'm moving back and forth. You can see here that, right, I've got my, what do we call these things? Functions here. It's not a function. What am I creating? My graph here. Sorry. Taking me a little time to learn the Bolt 2 language. I got my graph here. I've got a function in it. I can double click in it. I'm in there super quick. I'm back super quick. This is pretty damned impressive. Yeah, still not sure why that is working. Anyways, breadcrumbs sort of maybe working. Okay. Let's keep looking at what we've got here. The other thing I've heard, I have heard here that the events aren't working super great. But this is one of the things that I am super excited about. Events, when I discovered events in Unity, it changed the way I did things. And this goes back to what I was kind of rambling about while I was trying to get this all to work. Design patterns, game design patterns are super crucial. And this kind of observer messenger pattern, I think those are the same thing. Certainly observer pattern is a really handy one where you basically just, something might happen over here in this game object and it says, hey, this happened. And other objects may or may not be listening to it. And that's how we can use events. We can basically just announce, hey, this happened. And if anything in the game, in the scene cares, they can listen and pick up that information. If nobody cares, it doesn't break anything. And that is just awesome. And particularly, you can think about it like in UI. For example, I could actually, we should just do that. I'll make a UI element here that does this. If we can get events working, that maybe something like you have some code that's calculating the health of the player constantly, or it's keeping track of damage, and you have an element up in your UI that wants to display that. And rather than having those two connected, in such a way that if one of them's not there or something breaks, the whole game breaks. Instead, you can connect them with events, and that script that's looking at that's controlling the player's health, that's calculating the damage done or the healing or whatever's going on in your game, it can just constantly be sending out an event. Hey, the health changed, there was damage done, healing was done, and then the UI can respond to that, which is pretty sweet. So let's I don't know, let's create a new object here. Let's call it fake player health. All right. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to create a new player class. Let's call it player health. And again, I'm pretty sure there's a bug in here with the event, so this may not work. Let's try it. Let's do a new behavior here, and let's try a. Let's not get too fancy here. Actually, let's think about this. Let's do this all UI wise. Let's do it all UI. So I'm going to create a new text, and let's get ourselves lined up here so we can see this. And here's our new text. Let's make this nice and big. Make this nice and big. Something like that. Yeah, that's fine. So this is going to be our player health. We're just going to like display a value up here. And let's make a button. Let's make a button. And we'll call this do damage. Not do damager, do damage. And we'll make this nice and big, like so. I'll put it over here. And we'll say do. Probably that didn't scale up, but all right. All right, do damage. We'll give it a nice little red theme. So what I'm thinking here is, what I want to do is when this button gets pressed, the player health changes, and we can update that here, and we'll just use this as a way to kind of play with events. Yeah, Cryptic 808. Yeah, I think that's where we're headed, to a little bug. But you know, I'm curious to see what the bug is and see where it's going. See what happens. So I am going to I'm a little afraid to delete these because of what happened last time when I deleted those. Go back to our C# preview here, and what I'm going to do is, do we still have the on button? We still have the on button click. Okay, the on button click. This is going to be our event, or hopefully we get. It looks like we'll get a call back to that. So when we do that, we're going to take some player health, and change it. I'm going to create a variable player health. We'll just kind of do the classic here, set it to 100. And each time this button gets clicked, we are going to get this value, player health, and we're going to subtract. Well, we're an int, so let's stick with int. Subtract int, and we're going to subtract 10 from it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the value like that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get the player health, we're going to subtract 10 from it, and set the value of the player health to that new value. So let's just make sure that's working. So what I'm going to do here is on my button here, I'm going to go back and add the class component, and I'm going to drag in player health, which is a stupid place to keep your player health. Don't keep your player health on a button. There's my cube losing its mind again. You're not calling that. Oh, I see what I did. Oh, maybe not. This doesn't look like my variable. Yep. Well, that is the variable. Interesting. Interesting. Anybody seen this one before? Anybody seen this? It appears to be a little bit of a name this thing. Do player damage. Oh, let's try the play. Oh, let's go into play mode and back out of play mode and see if that resets things. There was that issue before. Oh yeah, look at the code. Good call. Let's look at the C# code. So it's got this on button click, but it maybe that's not an event. Let's do it this way. Let's wire it into the on click. Can we do that? Class component. Yeah, so that's not showing up. So it's interesting. I don't know if that's gonna get a on button click is not. I don't know of on button click being a function that gets called. Okay, let's check the console. Yeah, let's do that. Why is the console? Oh, geez. That might be errors from earlier. Let's run this again and see if it works. Expanding invalid max min max a. What the frick does that mean? Yeah, right, Lazy Goblins, that looks to me like a normal function, but so do the start and updates, so I don't know what's happening. Let's try it this way. So let's create a flow function. Let's call this do damage. Go in back here, and I'm gonna grab this stuff so I don't have to recreate it. And we're gonna set it in like this. Delete this thing. And I think. Let's go back here to our onClick class components. Does this show up in my... Okay, let's okay, so that's not working. Let's go back and create another flow behavior. And let's try here a mouse down. On mouse down is a legitimate... No, that's not what I want. I want on button click. Or that's what I had. That's what I had before. It's not an event. While I'm flailing around here, what's really cool, like if I look over here at my class component over here on the right, both the do damage and this newly created flow behavior are updated here, and I can open them from that class. That's pretty nice. See if anybody's got a yeah, okay, let's get rid of the cube. I don't think the cube's causing any problems, but we can get rid of our cube. That's fine. Our code. Player damage. Okay. The other thing I like, I saw this in the change. If you type in the kind of value that you want to add as a literal, like so I just put in quotes hello, I get a string literal. If I do something like 3f, I'll get a float literal. I do 3, I get the two things like that. If I do 3, 3, 3, I can get my vector 3. Do another one, I get a vector 4. That's pretty nice. Again, Laszlo's really thought about kind of the shortcuts here of what's going on. Okay. Oh, that's working. It's working now. Okay, that's working. So let's I'm gonna paste this in here. Why? Oh, that didn't like that at all. Okay, let's try this again. All right. Come on. All right. Okay, so that was working that time. And again, bug, I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe it's not changing. Okay, so player health went to 0. Okay. All right, well let's change this up a little bit. Let's do let's do it like, let's break our flow here. Since we got a debug message anyways, let's do it like this. Put a proxy in there because I can. We'll do like, oh geez, oh no, oh no. All right. Okay, so here we go. Oh, the snapping really is nice. Whoever said the snapping's nice, you are really right. The snapping's really, really nice. Okay, so now we're gonna print that value out every time we click the button. So I'm wondering if what's happening is we're just not getting an update in the inspector or in our explorer here. Invalid output cannot be fetched dynamically, must be assigned. Oh, duh. Dumbass. I would have thought that I should have been able to get that value back out. Anyway, okay. Let's try it. Let's try it this way. Try this. There we go. Okay, so what's happening here, and this is, maybe this is worth reporting, maybe not. Our editor values are not getting updated, neither is our inspector, but you can see here that it is getting updated. Okay, so we've got a button that works. That's great. I'm gonna leave that debug in there just to keep knowing that it's working. And let's try this event. Let's at least see what this flow is like. So let's call this player, I don't know if we can do spaces. Was damaged, we can probably do spaces. Was damaged, okay. And parameters, we're gonna add in a parameter. I believe my player health is an integer. Okay. And so let's see what if I just drag this in. Okay, so I just drag it in, I get a listen to, and if I hold Alt, I get a trigger, which is what I think I want to do. And I'm going to drag that in like so. Let's name this thing. Player current health. Whoa. So you can see there in our invoke statement here, I'm willing to bet that's the GUID that is getting printed out there. That is not the current health. Oh well, all good. Okay, so anybody know where's the button that you can see? Can we see the flow? Always one of those things I kind of have enjoyed, but not gonna worry about it. I will figure out how to do that. So let's push play again, just make sure we're not getting any errors. We're all still working. There we go. Happy as can be. So then we're gonna go up to our text, and here I'm gonna create a new class definition. So we're gonna add in health. We're gonna call this health display. So whatever, probably could do it the other way around. Health display. And here, what we're going to do, so I'm going to create a new flow behavior. I think that's what I want to do. And because this is going to be a component, so yeah, that is what I want to do. I am going to see if we can do, if I can drag this in. So I'm going to listen to this. So you can see it's green. It's supposed to be an event, and we can see here player was damaged, so we're bringing in current player health. That looks good. That's what we want here. But again, this is a part where I'm pretty sure I'm going to run into a bug. This was reported as a bug. And then what we're going to do, what happens if I drag this in? Okay, now what I want to do, I'm going to get rid of the start and the update. I don't care right now. What I want to do is do text. So we're going to set the text on the text element, and we're going to make us just call it health. I get a string literal like so. We're going to do concat two values like so. First one's going to be player health. This other one's going to be this. Okay, yeah, we'll do. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that, right? So what I was trying to do there was send an integer in as a string, which in some cases works in C#, some cases it doesn't. But what it was able to do was it popped up this conversion unit for me, which is much appreciated. Let's do this as a proxy. Okay. Something like that. Let's see. Can we just do it like this? Gonna be grumpy with it. They all lit up, so that's usually a good sign. That's usually a good sign. Okay, so again, this is probably where we're gonna hit a bug. This is where some bugs are expected. And it's not. That's not getting called. That's not happening. I think that was pretty well known. But this is how you would do it, and this is why the events are so very useful. I love that. Love that. Okay. What else can we do here? I'm starting to get a little tired here. We've been on here for a while. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm pretty excited what I've seen so far. This was a known bug. I just, dumb luck. Let's see if we can get around it. But it doesn't look like that's working right now. Let's take a look at maybe one more thing. Maybe let's make this work. Let's make this health thing work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new definition, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, let's call it game manager for lack of a better name. We're going to create a game manager. And what I'm going to do is let's create a variable here. I was thinking I'd create an asset. Let's create a singleton. So this is singleton is not going to be in the scene at all. It's just going to be in Never Never Land, wherever Laszlo decided to put it. I know there's some way you can access it and see it. I can't remember where that is. We're going to create a new. We're going to create player health here. And we're going to set that to 100, like so. And we're going to keep that all public, yada, yada. That's great. And that's all I'm going to do. So this is one way that you could create, say, like a helper function or a game manager that's going to track the stats. So there's one place where this lives. Now, this isn't the only way to do it. It's not necessarily the best way to do it, but it is a way to do it. So let's go back to our player health here. Let's open that up. Actually, that one is not working, so let's get rid of that. Go to our player damage here. Now, instead of getting this local version, we're going to get this version here. Set up those proxies like so. And we're going to set the version value here. Then I can delete this one. So again, in terms of the game pattern, maybe what's happening here is I have this game manager. It's not in the scene at all. It's somewhere in my project. It's somewhere again in Never Never Land, which pros and cons to that for sure. And it's got this player health variable. It's the only variable that I've got in my project at the moment in my Explorer. And this player health, which is now a bad name for this. So let's rename it. Do player damage. Okay. Do player damage is connected to my button. It does some damage. It can get a reference to that player health. And it was really simple. I just dragged it over. And then our health display. So let's go back to our display value over here. Let's grab, we're going to change this out. Do a replace, update. We're going to do this all right. Let's do an update. So update is not how you want to do this because it's getting called all the time. But it is a way to get around the events not working. And so again, for those of you guys new to events, that's one of the great things about them is you can get around having to run updates all the time. So now what this is going to do is every frame is going to go out and grab it and update the UI. Let's see if this works. I might have to go in and out of play mode. Let's go in and out of play mode a couple times. Okay, so one thing that's not happening here Yeah. Oh, look at that. That's not a great thing to be doing, is it? That's just not working. That's just not. Oh, did I? Let's make sure I actually attached that thing correctly. I'm a dumbass. I didn't put the class definition on there. I don't know about you guys, but I've done that so many times. I have tried to figure out why code isn't working, and then just forgot to attach it. So there we go. Every time I update this, that is now working. So let's go back. Let's go back and let's try it with the event. Yep. Nope. Event's not working. It's okay. That's okay. We knew that wasn't going to work. But I guess that's an example of where these singleton classes, like a game manager, I often in my projects I have a static class which is very similar to the singleton here, and it just stores a bunch of values that I need to reference later in my project. I was wondering if I could open up this. I could see this game manager where this was defined, but I'm kind of curious. Let's add in a flow behavior here. Is this static? I can't put in a. I was kind of curious to see here if the game manager class would be static. It's not, so I wonder where it's living somewhere else. I wondered if it was just a static class, but it's doing something else. Anyways, I'm definitely getting a little blurry-eyed here. I'm pretty excited to see Bolt 2. These were the big things that I wanted to see. I wanted to get a cube spinning. That was pretty easy. I wanted to see how functions work. That was pretty easy. I was really hoping events were going to work, but I knew since over the last 36 hours that was likely going to be buggy. So this is pretty darn exciting. I'm excited for this to go into beta. I'm excited for Laszlo to put up some hot fixes, some patches, and make this work. I'm pretty excited to get some new videos going. But I'm going to call it quits here. If you got something you'd like to see in a video on Bolt 2, let me know in the comments below. Put it in chat. It's going to kind of disappear here, but put it in a comment below. I'd love to hear from you, get ideas on where you'd like to see this go. Admittedly, my focus is a little bit more on the dev dog videos right now. Production on my channel is going to be a little bit slower, but anyways, thank you all for joining. Check out the links below in the video description to see where you can download this, how to download this, and start playing around with it. It's pretty awesome. There's also a link to the forum. If you run into bugs, go post those bugs. It's going to help all of us. It's going to help us get Bolt 2 out of alpha stage into beta and hopefully into stable build pretty soon. So thank you all, and who knows when I'll be back. But until next time, happy game design.